rest of the material in the time we have. So the lecture for today is supply chain management and how this relates to facilities planning. And I know some of you, at least the people from industrial engineering, take a class in supply chain from Dr. Jean. But for those of you who are not in the industrial engineering program, this might be something new. For those of you who haven't taken that class yet as well, so we need to discuss how this relates to facilities planning. And that will be part of our first objective for this course, which is develop an understanding of the principles of facilities location, layout, and material handling systems to practice the design of facilities. So the agenda, we're going to cover these topics: what is supply chain management, supply chain strategy framework, the components of a supply chain management, and the major obstacles and common problems. So in terms of, just to give you an idea of the cost of a supply chain for a manufacturing firm, most of the time supply chain costs are divided into two areas, most of it including logistics. So these are some data coming from 1990 and 1996, in which you can see the transportation costs in 6 years went from 352 to 455 billion in terms of increasing cost. And the inventory expense also went up almost by $100 billion. And this is including this data for the United States. The administrative expense and the logistic related also covered 10% of the gross domestic product in the United States. So as you can see, these activities are very costly, and that cost is passed to the customer because that's part of the cost that you pay for the articles that you buy in the store. So if you look at the cost breakdown of a manufactured good, 10% of it, only 10% is profit. Supply chain cost covers around 20%. Marketing is 25%, and the manufacturing cost is 45%. So, as you can see, this is a big component of a manufacturing good. To illustrate the magnitude, Compact estimate the loss of $0.5 billion to $1 billion in sales in 1995 because laptops were not available when they were needed. So if you are not able to deliver the goods that you need for your customers, then you have a cost of not being able to sell those goods. Procter & Gamble estimates saved retail customers $65 million in 18 months by collaborating, resulting in a better match supply and demand. And when the 1 gig processor was introduced by AMD, the price of the 800 meg processor dropped by 3%. The importance of the supply chain management, understood by some of the companies. AMR Research, the biggest issue enterprise face today is intelligent visibility of their supply chains, but both upstream and down, so from the manufacturer to the customer, from the customer to the manufacturer. Company needs to sense and proactively respond to unanticipated variations in supply and demand by adopting emerging technologies such as intelligent agents to boost their operational agility. Firms need to transform their static supply chains into adaptive supply chains or networks. So we need to have a better information flow between what's going on with the customer and what's going on in the manufacturing setting. The Gartner Group, by 2004, 90% of enterprises that fail to apply supply chain management technology and processes to increase their agility will lose their status as preferred suppliers. And this is an open-ended statement at that time, so which illustrates the importance of having a good understanding of what's going on in your manufacturing plant. So this is information for 2014. Here are the top 25 supply chain companies. So at the top, you have Apple, McDonald's, and Amazon. So you see that it's not only having a good product that makes the company successful, it's also the way they manage their company and the supply chains. So these reports comes every year. A few years ago, Walmart was number 1. Now it dropped to 14. So I guess there's a lot of companies doing better in terms of bringing their products to the customers. So a supply chain manager, the idea is we want to minimize the supply chain costs. While keeping a reasonable service level. Okay, so it's not that we're going to optimize, we're going to reduce costs and try to provide the goods at cheaper cost possible. We also need to take into account the customer service. So that includes the quality of the product and the on-time delivery. So this is how the supply chain management contributes to the bottom line. Supply chain management is not strictly a cost reduction paradigm. Okay, so I just want to make that clear. It's not only about reducing the cost, it's also taking into account the customer satisfaction, delivery of the product, and the quality of the product. So in order to be able to get a good quality of your product, there are several things that need to be taken into account. You have to have good suppliers. So if you have a supplier that is not delivering the product that you need in a good shape, then your final product will have problems. So remember, it's not just finding the cheaper supplier. You also have to find a supplier that produces the part or the component that you need with a good quality. So here's a picture that is trying to illustrate the supply chain. So we have several components. We have a supplier, which is basically producing some of the components that you need to manufacture your product, and also the materials that you need to produce something. Then you have your company. You're going to receive those raw materials. You're going to produce your final good, and then you're going to send that to a distributor. So you're going to have to need some way to transport your goods. Also, some areas that will need, you're going to arrange those products so you can send them to the retailer. And again, you're going to have multiple retailers around the city or the state. And then finally, you get the customer the good that they want. So this is upstream and downstream. So they're trying to match the supply and the demand that translate into profitability to products and services. And these are the things that we are trying to achieve: the right product, the right price, the right store, the right quantity, the right customer, and the right time. All of that together translate into higher profits. So just to give you an idea of all the things that gets together to produce a good, we have an example here for the detergent supply chain. And so the supply chain will involve everybody from the customer to the last supplier. So for instance, we are trying to get this detergent done. So we're gonna have people in the packaging area, gonna be supplying you the packaging for your product. So then are gonna have some supplier of the materials that they need in order to be able to manufacture that component. We have the oil company that is going to be producing some of the raw materials that you need to produce that detergent. And also we have a chemical manufacturer that is going to be producing the plastic cup. And all together, then you can put together the product that you need for your customer. You send that to a third party. Basically, it's the transportation or the logistic component of your good, and then you send that to the store. And from there, the customer is the one that is gonna buy the good. So it's a lot of things happening in order to get just a simple good into the store. So the flow in supply chains includes material information and funds, which is basically the money between the supplier and the customer. And as you can see, that arrow in the middle, that information goes both ways. So you need some information from the customer in order to see what you're going to manufacture. A supplier needs to know about the customer interest in order to deliver the product that the customer needs. So supply chain management is concerned with the management and control of the flow of material, information, and finances in supply chains. So another picture here just to show you some of the logistics that involve the supply chain. So we have some this international type of supply chain. So we have some suppliers in Thailand that will send that to another supplier in India, and then that sends via airplanes or via ship to logistics in Mexico, and then they have some distributors that are going to send that to Texas, and then from there you take it to the stores. So the task of the supply chain management is to design, plan, and execute the activities at different stages so as to provide the desired levels of service to supply chain customers' profitability. Okay, so the task of the supply chain management is to design, plan, and execute the activities at different stages so as to provide the desired level of service to supply chain customers' profitability. So another slide to illustrate the importance of supply chain management. In 2000, the U.S. companies spent $1 trillion, again 10% of the gross domestic product, on supply-related activities, movement, storage, and control of products across supply chains. And this is coming from the State of Logistics report. So the idea is we want to eliminate the inefficiencies occurring in the supply chains in order to save those costs that can be saved. So for instance, we can minimize the frequent supply shortage. So if we need something in order to produce that good that we need to produce, we need to make sure that we have that material ready every time that we need to produce it. We want to minimize the high inventories in the chain. So if we are not selling a particular product, then we don't want to have those inventories going high. We want to minimize the inefficient logistics. So we want to deliver the right product to the right retailer want to minimize the ineffective promotions, so we don't want to spend money in things that are not going to help us sell the product that we want to sell. Minimize the high landed costs to the shelf, high stock out, and the low order fill rates. So all those things are part of the cost, and those are things that we can actually improve in our supply chain. So another illustration of how the supply chains work. So again, we have a supply. We have some customers asking for some goods, and we have some points in the map that are going to be part of our locations for inventory, in which we're going to move those items depending on the need. So we have the areas related to the vendors and also to the manufacturing plants. We have the inventory, right? We have moving our goods to some of the stores, and we also have the final cost. The cycle view of supply chain. So we have multiple cycles within the supply chains. Here I'm illustrating 4 of them. We have the customer order cycle. We have the replenishment cycle, the manufacturing cycle, and the procurement cycle. So you can see who is involved in each one of those cycles. So from customer arrival, customer triggers an order, suppliers fulfill the order, and customers receive the order. Now, we talked a little bit about what is a push and a pull system, and how does that relate to a facility. Specifically, we talk about the just-in-time philosophy, just-in-time manufacturing system, which is a pull system. We also talk about the push system, which is mostly what is done in most of the facilities. You can think about a manufacturing line for a car, which you're pushing your product along the production manufacturing plant. And also you're making that good available to the customer by keeping some of them or most of them in a warehouse and moving them according to the demand. So what instigates the movement of the work in the system? In push systems, work release is based on downstream demand. So push systems keeps inventory to meet actual demand. So for instance, if you go to a car dealer, Toyota, Nissan, you see when you go there, you already have the goods available. You have the cars. You don't have all of them. You have several models and the availability of colors and so on. And so that's what we're trying to say. It's a push facility and acts proactively. So you're trying to push those goods and you want to make that available on your retailers. On the other side, pull systems, work releases is based on actual demand or the actual status of the downstream customers. This may cause long delivery times, and this one acts reactively. So for instance, you can use this example to illustrate the difference. When you're trying to get an internship, and you go talk to a company, you have your resume already on hand, and you want to try to get that internship and you provide that resume, that could be push. But if you talk to the company beforehand and you find out what they need, then you can target your resume to that specific company. That could be, in some way, what a pull system does. You want to basically address the need of the company by creating a resume that is targeting that company. Um, so we have both of these systems in the supply chain. We have the push component of it and the pull component of it. So the pull component includes the customer order cycle, and the push process includes the procurement, manufacturing, and replenishment cycle. So the boundary is when the customer order arrives. And again, in order to illustrate the difference between those things, you can also think about any bookstores, say Barnes and Noble, which have the books available to the customers, and you go there, you grab the book that you need, and you pay for it. Or you can think about Amazon, in which you go, you check if they have the book available, you put the order. Most likely what they're going to do is you're going to find a retailer to pull that book and send it to you. Okay, so one way and the other. You have some advantages for each one of the systems and disadvantages. So for the pull, you're going to have to wait a longer time to get your book. In the push system, you'll get it right away. So let's talk about the supply chain strategy framework. So the mission, strategy, tactics, and decision. You need to have a mission statement. Basically, the existence, the reason of an organization. So once you have that clear, I mean, most of the companies will have a mission statement. You can go to any web page of any company and you will find what's the mission statement of that company. So once you understand that mission statement, then you can address the strategy that you're going to use to design your supply chain. So if you're focusing only on service, quality of service, then your supply chain should be managed in a certain way. If you are focusing more on delivering a high volume of parts, then your supply chain will be handled differently. So that's why you need to know and understand what's the reason and what's the goal of the organization. So strategy basically will be a plan for achieving the organizational goals. Then the tactics, the actions taken to accomplish the strategies. And finally, the operational decisions, which are the day-to-day decisions to support the tactics. So, for example, Ted is an undergrad. He would like to have a career in business, have a good job, and earn enough income to live comfortably. So we can target these 4 bullets, as we explained in the previous slide. So the goal will be to have a successful career with good income. Strategy, maybe wants to go for a master's degree. Tactics, select a college and concentration. Operations, register, buy books, and so on. Okay, so this is basically linking what we discussed in terms of the mission, strategy, and tactics and decisions for a company. So a competitive business strategy involves these 3 things. So the product development strategy, of course, you want to get a product that is needed by the customer. You're going to have a good marketing strategy. Maybe use some coupons, discounts, or maybe provide a good that is different from other competitors. And finally, a supply chain strategy, which is what we're trying to discuss in this lecture. So this will involve finance, accounting, information technology, human resources, and so on. Going from the new product development to marketing, operations, distribution, and service. So the product development component is related to the technologies for future operations via patents and set of product services. I don't know if you have heard in the news important of patents. There was a case a few years ago, a couple of years ago, about the design of the iPhone and how that was similar to other cell phones. So patents are very important for your company. That basically gives you some time for you to be the owner of a particular idea, and you can take advantage of that by selling that new technology. So it's important for the company to be a technology leader, like IBM was with the personal computers at some point, and offer many products like Dell does that basically creates a product from the customer perspective. Basically, try to address all the needs for the from the customer. So it's a product that is targeting a specific customer. Another way to do this is by offering products for the locals. And here is a very interesting example. I don't know if you have heard about the Tata Nano car, which is the cheapest car in the world. They tried to bring it to the United States, but it was not able to pass the safety test. But this is a car that is in India. It costs about $2,500. Very cheap. And here I give you some ideas of the things that they did to save money. So this is a product that is very target oriented to the population in India. So it's a very cheap car, and it provides the services that they need in their country. So something else in terms of strategies, the marketing and sales strategies relates to positioning, pricing and promotion of products, services. For example, if your strategy is never to offer more than 40% discount on your product, I don't know if you want to keep some reputation in your product. You don't want to provide large discounts. Another strategy is the everyday low price. That's a Walmart. And also the use of coupons. Best Buy, for instance, during Christmas and so on. Um, the supply chain management strategy relates to procurement, transportation, storage, and delivery of the goods. Um, for example, strategy could be never use more than one supplier for every input, never expedite orders just because they are late, um, always use domestic suppliers within the sales seasons, not in advance, and so on. So those are some examples that you can use for managing your supply chain. Um, Another question is how to fit the supply chain to the customer, or vice versa. Um, for that, you need to just understand the customer and what they need. Also, you need to understand the capabilities of your supply chain. So if you are not able to move large goods, then you don't want to explore that area in your company. Um, Also, there are some goods that need some type of um, refrigerators, for instance, in your trucks and so on. So you want to make sure that you have the capability to move the goods that you want to produce in your company. Um, the idea is to match the customer, which is with the capabilities. And the challenge is how to meet extensive, which is with the limited capabilities. So to achieve this strategic fit, um, you need a consistent supply chain management and competitive strategies. So we need to feed our supply chains to the customer. And for that, you need to understand who is your customer. So the range of the demand, for example, for some restaurants, demand will be stable. So you know how much, if you can predict how many pizzas you're going to sell in a week, for instance, for Pizza Hut. Um, you need to understand the production lot size. So that would involve the seasonal uh, products. So for Christmas, you will have a demand for certain products that you will not have during the summer, and so on. The response time for some companies, having the good available in a short period of time is very important. Um, Here I have an example for hospitals, organ transplantation and transportation. So if you need a person that is needing this transplant, as soon as it gets available, you have to make sure that the person that is needing the organ is available for the operation, and that is transported to the location that where the patient is. Service level, product availability. So if you um, look, there's certain type of customers that like to go to a specific store because they have always the goods that they need available. So that's also important. Product variety, innovation, and accommodating poor quality. So, for instance, if you have a good that is damaged, how would you handle that with your customer? Would you replace that, or would you provide some type of warranty, that type of thing. So those are things that are important in order to understand the customer. As this applies for any type of system, there will be some type of uncertainty in your supply chain, your company, in your manufacturing plant. So we need to plan for that as well. So, for instance, commodities such as detergent, long lead time steel, and so on. And we also have some type of customized products here. So we need to be able to respond to the demand of those products by taking into account the need of the customer and also the implied demand of the demand uncertainty. So we don't know for sure how many goods are we going to sell in a week. That's the uncertainty part of the supply chain. You can have some estimates, but you never know for sure how your customer is going to behave and what's going to happen during the week that might increase the demand of a particular product. For instance, I know that when there was a hurricane, I think it was in 2005, coming to Houston. And at that point, there was an unexpected event, and grocery stores were short on some of the products that, for instance, bottled water and so on. So you need to make sure that you also have some type of leverage in your supply chain so you can accommodate those unexpected events. So here's some graphs. I like to show some graphs just to give you a visual representation. Understanding the supply chain and cost responsiveness trade-off. So here we have the responsiveness and we have the cost. So and we have the efficient frontier. So this is the inefficient region. So if the cost is low, you can see how the curve moves in terms of being efficient. So for high cost, you want to be very responsive. But as the cost goes down, then you have more leverage in terms of being less responsive. So that's basically tied with the cost of your product. In terms of the strategic fit, which versus capabilities, we have the uncertainty in terms of the demand. So if we have a certain demand, also in terms of responsive. So we want to have, if you have a certain demand, you want to be very efficient with a low cost. That would basically be the lunch buffet, for instance, and you know you're going to have a lot of people if you have a good price, so you can plan for that. And if you start with having a gourmet type of restaurant, that you know that you're going to have an uncertain demand and you're going to have a higher cost for your supply chain. The top 10 retailers in 2008, showing this, I think I mentioned this before, that was Walmart. And here we have some extra information in terms of that particular retailer. We have the countries of operations and the format. So they basically manage cash and carry warehouse, club, discount department, and so on. And then next we have the Home Depot. These two are kind of coming from the international. So we have a couple of them from the United States, another one from France, another one from the United Kingdom. So this gives you an idea of how important this is. In terms of big retailer strategy, Walmart focused more on efficiency. Target tried to be the competition of Walmart, but they focus more on quality and service. And this one is international, and the focus is on buying. I don't know if you know the story about Kmart, but this at some point was one of the largest competitors of Walmart. They lose some market. Um, right now is squeezed between Target and Walmart. They rely on coupon sales, and basically this is a question for you. Do you think coupons stabilize or destabilize the supply chain? Why? Yeah. 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 So again, a specific strategy may not be good for your store. If you think that you bring in more customers by using coupons will help you increase your sales, but at the same time you can have a shortage in your goods. So that's why it's important to have a good strategy and also a good supply chain. So Kmart and Sears merged in 2004. At that point, Kmart was able to get money to stabilize their business, and Sears gets the presence outside the malls. Um, Other factors that affect your supply chain, um, multiple products in a supply chain, um, multiple customers for a given product. A good idea might be to have a separate supply chains or tailored supply chains. For example, Barnes& and Noble will handle their supply chains for their internet business separately from their their business on the stores and competitors. Um, so we are moving to a faster and global type of economy. So, for instance, the future online programs may be something that will be catching up on the education. Other factors, the product life cycle, and this involve several areas. But in terms of the supply chain, uh, strategy moves towards efficiency and low implied uncertainty as product ages. Um, Air travel is becoming more efficient. For instance, Southwest Airlines lead the drive for efficiency. So they have different ideas. They have different strategies that make them a good competitor right now. Flat screen TV producers, uh, this particular AO Optronics of Taiwan was looking for ways to make the supply chain more efficient in June 2004. Replacement sales, selling to replace broken units. So, for instance, you go to um, the outlets here in San Marcos, you'll have stores like Bose that they sell you their goods that are repaired units, and they provide you some guarantee about those goods. Um, so AC replacement, for instance, is about 50% of the market. This also happens with cars. You replace your battery. The battery that you're turning in most likely be a new battery in the future. So that type of thing is also another type of improving your supply chain. Achieving a strategy fit over a life cycle. So we want to be able to design a supply chain strategy that will allow us to be within this line. So we have a certain demand, be able to produce efficiently with low cost, but we have a certain demand, be able to be responsive, and that would imply that we'll have a higher cost. Um, Integration is a central theme in supply chain management. We want to building synergies by integrating business functions, departments, and companies. So this is very important. Again, there's going to be a lot of information moving from customers to suppliers, from suppliers to manufacturers. So there should be a very strong integration between these systems. So another way to see this, here I have the chart. So we want to be able to address each one of these boxes. So have a competitive strategy that will address the needs for each one of these. Have a product development strategy that will address all the needs from these people and so on. So we need to cover all those areas in order to be efficient with our supply chains. Okay, so in terms of the drivers and obstacles, so the question is how to achieve efficiency and responsiveness. So here's where this topic basically is tied to facilities planning. So our supply chain structure will have inventory, transportation, facilities, which is the logistical driver, and this is the area that we want to address in this course. And then they have some cross-functional drivers that include information sourcing and pricing. So in order to achieve high efficiencies and responsiveness, we need to be able to manage and plan our inventory, transportation, and facilities, and also make good use of information sourcing and the pricing strategies. In terms of the inventory, convenience is important. So, going to have a cycle inventory. We want to have fresh products if you are in the uh, stores. Also, for instance, no customers will buy X one by one, so you have to provide the right package to your customers. Um, Plan for unstable demand. Taking into account the seasonal inventory that includes, for instance, bathing suits, Christmas toys, Christmas decorations, and so on. Plan for randomness and the uncertainty of your system. So, might be good to have some safety inventory. Remember the example we discussed about Compaq, they lose $500 million for not having the computers available. And have a pipeline inventory, meaning that you have the right number of working process goods in your manufacturing plant. Yes, some of you, or most of you, have heard about the Little's Law. So this is the way to plan for your inventory. So if you want to have some inventory available, you take into account the throughput and the delay time for producing that unit, and you can plan for your inventory. So I'm not going to go in detail about this. I'm pretty sure you're going to talk about this in other courses. Transportation is important. You need to decide what type of transportation are you going to use. If you're going to be moving your goods using air, truck, rail, ship, and so on. So, next slide. Facilities. Plan your production. It's going to be flexible versus dedicated. Flexibility cost includes service. For instance, can you structure teach music as well as supply chain management? So you want to make sure that you are able to find the right person to provide the service that you need. And in terms of sports, can a playmaker who shoots well is rare? Well, that's my opinion. But you want to find someone that is going to be focusing on the areas of the game they suppose. For example, playmaker will pass the ball and be the leader in the court. Inventory-like operations, receiving, pre-packing, storing, picking, packaging, sorting, accumulating, shipping. You need to plan for the storage. You need more space. And cross-docking is another way of moving your goods. Right now, this is strategy that is used by Walmart. So I think they have one in 35. You go down close to New Brownfields, you will see one of the cross-dockings for or distribution center for Walmart. Okay, information is very important. The role in the supply chain is the connection between the different stages in the supply chain. The information is crucial to daily operation of each stage in the supply chain. It has a major role in the competitive strategy. It allows the supply chain to become more efficient and more responsive at the same time. Um, Information technology, again, is a way to manage the information to have in your company. We have an example here. Under Windows, window manufacturer, customers can choose from a library of 50,000 designs and create their own. So that's the way that you want to use the information. So you want to go provide as much information that you need, and maybe you can target those customers more efficiently. Characteristics of good information. You have information should be accurate. So good information will allow you to have good models that will allow you to have good decisions. Should be accessible, up to date, and organized in the correct form. So having the information, let's say a table of, I don't know, million data points would not give you a lot of information about your company. But if you can organize that data in a table or somehow that you can get the right information from this tool, then that will be more helpful. So quality information is important. Information drives the decisions. So good information, again, means good decisions. It helps in the materials requirement planning, or the MRP, in the enterprise resource planning, ERP. SAP is in the widely used software for companies management right now. Texas State uses it. Um, and electronic data interchange, EDI. So the questions are, what is the relevant information and how to use that information? Just to give you an idea of the investment. Okay, so before we get to that, this is, if you're not familiar with ERP, it's the Enterprise Resource Planning. It's a business management software. And if you go to industry, you might find this in your company. Provides real-time information in coordination and information sharing. It's a very expensive and difficult to implement software. And I can tell you 25% of the ERP installations are canceled within a year, and about 70% of then installations go over the budget. It's that intensive. But once you have it in your company, then it allows you to do a lot of things that would improve the efficiency of your processes, your facilities, and so on. So in the last 20 years, there's been a push on IT, sharing information, use the information that you have, the data that you have in your company. So you can see the trend in terms of increasing the investment in IT solutions. In terms of sourcing, the role in the supply chain is set of processes required to purchase goods and services in the supply chain. So this is where you decide who is going to be supplying your materials, who is going to be supplying your components for your product. So supplier selection, single versus multiple suppliers, and contract negotiation. The role in the competitive strategy is crucial. It affects the efficiency and responsiveness in the supply chain. So you want to make sure that you have a good supplier. If they don't supply your goods in time, then that means that your manufacturing process are going to be delayed, and you're not going to be able to deliver your goods. So you need to make decisions in terms if you want to produce in-house or have outsources. So, for example, Texas Instrument, more than half of the revenue is spent for sourcing, and Cisco, low-end products, home routers from China. So they can find some of their goods outside the States. In terms of pricing, pricing determines the amount to charge to customers in the supply chain. So pricing strategies can be used to match demand and supply. So for example, that means you're going to have some price elasticity. Role in the competitive strategy, use pricing strategies to improve efficiency and responsiveness. Low price and low product availability, vary prices by response time. For example, if Amazon provides you with a faster delivery, that will cost you more. So you can provide the customer with some options. In terms of the components of pricing decisions, prices, um, pricing and economies of scale, everyday low pricing like Walmart versus high low pricing, fixed price versus menu pricing, depending on the product and services, sometimes depending on the quantity, um, packaging, delivery, locations, time, customer pickup. So there's a lot of things that can influence your pricing strategy. Um, in terms of the considerations for supply chain drivers, so the drivers are listed here in the first column. So inventory transportation, facility, and highlighted this area. That's what corresponds to this class. Information sourcing and pricing. So in terms of the facilities, um, want to know how efficient, want to see we can consolidate or we can be dedicated. Are we going to be looking at multiple products? We're going to be manufacturing only one type of product and so on. And then where are we going to locate our facility? We're going to be located close to a big city, or are we going to be locating close to the coast, depending on the strategy that you have to move the goods that you need. And the flexibility in terms of uh, if you can hire more employees in a certain area than others, those are the things that you also have to take into account. Um, so some of the major obstacles to achieving a fit: supply chain is big, variety of products and services, um, for customers, multiple owners, and globalization. So for local, in terms of finding an optimal solution or the best solution, you will get a local optimization. You will not find a solution that will optimize all the people involved in these decisions. In terms of dealing with multiple owners, um, information coordination is important. Contractual coordination, coordination with real options. That's real, very rare in practice. Um, without coordination, there's misleading reliance on metrics, average safety inventory, average incoming shipment size that might not give you the right understanding of the real picture from your company. Also, instability and randomness, uncertainty, also very important, how to deal with the uncertainty in your supply chain. That will increase with product variety. If you have multiple products, multiple demands, shrinking product life cycles. So if your life cycle for a specific product is shorter than you thought, customer fragmentation, push for customization, segmentation, and globalization. Also, competitors can be also something else that will affect these supply chains. Common problems: lack of relevant supply chain matrix. How to measure the responsiveness? Um, it's very difficult. Um, how to measure the efficiency, cost, worker performance, and so on. But that's why you need to make sure that you plan for the strategy very well. Um, for instance, for inventory status information, then that will give you an idea of if you have a poor inventory status information, then you will not have an idea of what is available in your company, in your suppliers, and so on. So there's several things that can affect your inventory: theft, transaction errors, information delays, Misplaced inventory, meaning that you're moving some of your inventory to the incorrect location. Product quality, lack of visibility of your supply chain, and so on. So in terms of poor delivery status information, again, not knowing the order status, that would involve poor IT design, unreliable, duplicate data, also ignoring uncertainties. So again, it's very important. How do you plan for uncertainty events? Uncertainty events, internal customers, discrimination. So this is very common too. Giving lower priority to internal customers than external customers. This can be seen in the government, for instance, like for when I was working in a government officer in Puerto Rico. Sometimes they provided service to the private company and several private companies, and since the revenue that we were getting from external companies was higher, sometimes a preference was provided to private companies to service instead of servicing the locally owned customers. So that's something that also can happen. Then poor integration. Inventory costs. So accounting system not being able to capture the opportunity cost. And the supply chain insensitive product design. And that basically concludes our lecture for today. Which basically I wanted to go over the supply chain management and discuss what are the important things that we need to know in terms of the supply chain. Because in the future we're going to be tying some of these concepts to the design of the facilities. And as you saw, supply chains and facilities are tied, and in order to be able to design for our facilities, we need to take into account how our supply chain works. So that concludes the lecture. We're not going to have a homework this week. You had an exam on Monday, so we're going to go back to lecture on Monday. So do you have any questions? And hopefully we're going to have the exam ready on Monday so you can see your grade. So have a good weekend. I'll see you next week.